Okay, we're back, and now we're going to do the head. The funnest part, I feel. So let's get right into it. I'm going to double click the body symbol, and so all these layers are pretty much done except for the head. So select the head. This one here is a pretty complex shape. So what I'm going to suggest is, well, let's see what we can do with a rectangle. Alright. And I'm going to select the innards out, delete it, and now I just have this rectangle shape. So let's see how close I can get to making this shape. Have my snap on. You can see that it's still on. And I'm going to snap to this corner. And I'm going to snap up here to this corner. And I'm going to turn snap off. And let's round this off. And let's see what I can do here. I can actually make another point here by holding down the Alt key to get this shape just right. This might take a little bit of finesse, but alright. And let's add another point right here. Oops. Right here. And add a point right here. And bring this point right here. And we might have to add a point right there. No, I don't like that curve, so I'm just going to move it back. Okay, from this point here, I'm going to select the head layer, and I'm going to symbolize this layer. Going to modify, convert to symbol, and this one I'm going to call the head layer. HD for head. It's a movie clip. Okay. Now, the reason why I made this its own symbol is because I'm going to go into this one and put in the eyes and the mouth and do all the stuff to it in there. And in other animations, what you would do if we had more time is that we would actually animate the mouth moving and the eyes blinking and maybe the eyebrows going up and down. But honestly, we don't have enough time in this particular class to do that, so we're going to go as far as we can. So I'm going to move this head layer into our folder as well as our reference layer that we made earlier. Okay, so that's nice and clean, and I'm going to save it right here in case anything bad happens. Command S for the Mac, Control S for PC, and now I'm going to go into the head layer. So I'm going to okay. So I jumped forward a little bit, so let me go back. So with this symbol made, I'm going to double click this symbol. Let's make sure we have the selection tool. Okay, so now we're in the head layer. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to make a couple more layers. We're going to make the eye layers, the mouth layer, and the eyebrow layer. So we can actually move these around if we need to, if we get around to it in our animation. I like to keep the options available. So let's go through and first of all, let's name this one HD for head, and add a layer for eyes, a layer for eyebrows, and a layer for the mouth, and a layer for teeth. We'll see what we get around to. Okay, so let's name these. Let's name this one eyes. Eyebrows. Let's go BR for brow. And call this one the mouth. And last one, the teeth. Okay, so let's start with the eyes. I'm going to zoom in, and obviously I want to start with the circle on this one. So if I hold down on the rectangle tool, you can see that I have a variety of options now, and I'm going to go down to the oval tool, and let's make sure we lock this head layer before we get any further. Alright, so now when you're adjusting this circle, it can get pretty wonky pretty quick if you just start trying to mess around by reshaping it as you did with the rectangle. So Control Z, back up out of this. So the best way I've found to shape circles is to select it and then go to Free Transform tool, and then use these handles and these bounding boxes to get it as close as you can before you start really shaping it. Okay. Alright, so let's go. And I'm going to fuss with this until I get it just right, because it's kind of finicky. Alright, so here we go. Let's see. Okay, so I'm not going to be able to get this just right without making some pretty hardcore adjustments. So what I'm going to do here is, I don't want this part of the eye above this layer. So what I got to do is I got to cut this part out, and the best way I've found to do that is to use the line tool. And I'm going to make a line, and I'm actually going to change the color of the line real quick to like a blue so I can see it over the black. And I'm going to start at this point and go to that point, and move it over that line. So now what I can do is I can select this part of the line and delete it, and get rid of this fill. So now I have this eye, and let's change that back to black. Alright, so now I have this eye here. It's the shape that I want. I'm going to backstep and put it back where it was. And now additionally, I thought what I was going to do is be able to make this eye a duplicate and just move it over, and that's what I'm going to do. But since this eye is behind this part of the face, what I'm going to actually have to do is make the left eye its very own layer behind it. So we'll get to that in a minute, but first I need to make some eyelashes, or at least an eyelid. So let's do that with the line tool again. Alright, from this point to that point, and I guess my mouse needs some more batteries. Get to that in a moment. And clean up this excess. Alright, and I'm gonna make the head invisible to see what I got going on here. So it looks like I have to connect that. So the best way I know to do that is actually make a line and connect it, and that should work. Let's see. Okay, so I'm gonna have to actually have them snap to it. Let's do that again. Okay, So now they're snapped. This one thing's completely connected. So now we could put a color for the eyelid, and it has a place to live. So we'll take snap off, and we'll bring the head back into view. Zoom out just a little bit, and let's make another layer, and we'll call this one left eye. And we'll make this one below the head, so the head is actually colored in front of it. And so I will take this eye layer, and the same way that we did the legs and the foot, I'm going to copy it, Command D on the Mac, Control D on the PC, and I'm going to position it before I resize it. So right about there, that works. And I'm going to cut it, Command X on the Mac, Control X on the PC, select the left eye layer, right click on the stage, paste in place. There we go. Now let's resize it. Remember, I'm going to hold down Shift, and let's actually resize it a little bit more. Okay, that looks pretty good, and we're not going to see any of this part right here because that the head layer is going to actually cover that, so that works fine for me. Let's lock it, and let's rename this one to right eye, and lock that layer as well. So let's go to the eyebrows next, and in this one in particular we probably won't have to change or make duplicate layers, so we'll just make one and copy it over. So I'm going to go back to my rectangle tool. Actually, I think it'd probably be easier if we make a line tool for this one. So I'm going to make two lines, one like this, and just shape it. So this front line, give it kind of a bow, turn snapping on, and snap to this. Alright. And there we go. We could actually make them a little bit bigger if we wanted to. Actually, I can warp this one a little bit. Actually, let's rotate it a little bit. There's endless adjustments that you can do on this. Okay, that looks pretty good. And let's copy it. Command D, move it over, and let's rotate it to the other side and shrink it, holding down Shift and the selection tool. Let's rotate it a little bit more. I have snapping on so you can see that it was not allowing me to get very precise. Okay, so there we go. One thing I've noticed also, I'm going to lock this layer, but I don't have pupils in my eyes, and that's going to be an important element. So let's go back to the right eye, unlock it, and get the oval tool, and let's make the pupils. And I don't want to start in here, so I'm going to make the pupil out here first. Get rid of the fill, and let's bring it in here. Now we can go to the free transform and rotate it around. Okay, and let's duplicate it and put it in position, rotate it around, maybe shrink it a little bit. Alright, and cut it. And unlock our left eye layer. Right click on the stage, paste in place, and we'll lock both of these. Alright. And before we move any further, I'm going to save. Alright, so now we're going to move to the mouth. So I think the first thing that we should do is this upper lip, and it's kind of a complex shape, so let's see what we can do with the rectangle tool. Sort of my go-to for this lining process. Delete the fill, and let's start positioning these shapes. Give her some nice voluptuous lips, and move this point to somewhere in the middle so we can round them off like so, and like so. I need to actually finesse them a little bit. Okay, so here we're going to need a point about here, so holding down Alt, give it another point, and also we'll need a point right here for the dip in the lips, and might be a little much. Okay, that looks pretty good. And let's make the lower lips now. Same way, get the rectangle, delete the fill, and let's make this bottom part first. Right there. Let's put this snap on and get it snap right there. This might we should turn snap off. Alright. Okay, last thing is this little smile line. Let's create that with the line tool. So I'll put a line here and a line here, and we'll kind of do it the same way we made the eyebrows. Now this can get a little bit tricky, so I want you to stay with me on this one. Line it up with this line. And let's turn snap on. Okay, so there's our mouth. Let's lock that layer and let's do the teeth. So the teeth are actually going to sit behind the mouth, which is going to be kind of cool. Here we go. So now we're working the teeth. And these teeth are pretty simple. They're just some jagged lines. So let's see if we can't make it with one line. Alright, I'm going to get rid of this snap to objects for right now and use the line tool. We will drag one all the way across here and start by making points. So if this mouth is getting in the way, we can go ahead and make that layer invisible. And let's just make these teeth. So remember to add a point. I'm going to hold down the Alt key, and you're going to do the same thing here. I'm just going to keep holding down the Alt key whenever I need to make a new point. Oops. And I've heard of people being able to just go and create characters in Flash without ever having to draw, but that is not how I work. I really like to have this structure of having a character to use as a reference. I think I'd get a little bit lost without it. So okay, so I have these teeth here. Now there's not going to be a way to color this because this is not a closed-in shape, so that's the next thing we have to do, is have to make a line to close this shape in. So first I'm going to click on the snap and then snap these edges to the teeth and snap the edges to this teeth, and let's go ahead and bring it. And remember, the lips are going to conceal this color here, and we can turn the lips back on to see. Yeah, they're going to be concealed. Perfect. Now we just have to create this lower line that conceals these teeth here. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to get a line and adjust it for 1 second and then snap it. And we'll snap it right there. Take snapping off. Remember, this line has to be concealed by the lips, otherwise we'll see the teeth underneath the lips and that won't look good. So let's check the mouth layer. Will it conceal it? Looks like it just barely conceals it. Okay. Alright. That's pretty good. Let's go back to the head layer and put some nostrils in, and we'll call this layer good. So I'm going to make some ovals here on the side and delete the inside. Let's make these kind of goofy shape. And for this, I think what I'm going to do is just duplicate it. So Command D, bring it over, make it a little bit smaller so it's not quite so uniform. Awesome. Cool. We got this really cool head all lined out. And now we can go back to the body. Zoom out. And lastly, we have to make these spikes. And they're all kind of unique, but well, for the sake of this, let's go ahead and make them one shape, but we need to make their own layer, and we'll do it underneath everything. We'll make it under the tail layer, and we'll call this one spikes. Alright, so let's lock the head and make some spikes. I'm going to do it again with a rectangle real quick. delete the inside, and I'm going to start off and make sure they go behind the body, because we don't want to see the spikes floating. They'll sort of lose their impression of being on the animal. And let's zoom in. Okay, get back. Hotkey V to get back to the selection tool, and let's add some points. So I'm going to add one here by holding down the Alt key, add one there, add one here, just holding down the Alt key whenever I need to make a point. Alright, so now we can adjust these and maybe round them out a little bit so they don't look so fake. I guess they look fake no matter what. Okay, I like this one. And let's adjust it a little bit. Okay, so I'm just going to duplicate this one a bunch of times. So I'm going to zoom out and double click it and Control D. I'm not going to put it on its own layer because the spikes are on their own layer, and I'm just actually going to make a bunch real quick before I adjust them all. And the one right there. To select this whole shape, just double click it, and so every time I want to duplicate it, it's just Command D or Control D. I don't want to make them touch though, because once they touch, they'll get fused together. So make sure they're not touching initially. So let's start here. I'll double click this one, go to my free transform, and just sort of spin it around, position it where I want it, make it bigger. It's okay if they're not completely uniform. Actually, it probably looks better that way. So let's double click it. Oops. Double click this. Rotate it. Maybe make it a little bit smaller as it gets closer to the head. Remember, we want these things to go behind the body a little bit so they don't look like they're floating. Do the same here. Okay. Do the same here. We'll just continue this process until we get them all straight the way we want them. Do this one, rotate it, shrink it down a little bit. You can get pretty detail oriented on this process, so which is a good thing, because if you're going to make any mistakes, you want to catch them in this process before you go into coloring it. Alright, and the last one, this one's a lot smaller. Let's rotate it. While you're watching this video, if you come across any problems or any or you come up with any questions, make sure you write them down, bring them into class, because I really like to help you guys figure this program out as best I can. Okay, this looks pretty good, so I'll lock this one up. And so if I take away the reference image, you can see that you have this completely lined character. So the next thing we'll do is color it up and get rid of these lines, and you'll have a character ready to start animating. So that's it for this video. This is aligning the character, and I'll see you in the next video where we start coloring it up. Okay.